The cargo bay of the Meridian Dawn hummed with the low vibration of the ship's gravitational stabilizers. James Chen adjusted his grip on the polymer training sword, its weighted balance designed to simulate a real blade. He'd been aboard the human Zalari joint exploration vessel for 3 weeks now, and in that time, he'd noticed something peculiar about Liana. She moved differently. The young woman, barely 22, fresh out of the Martian colonies, carried herself with an effortless grace that seemed almost alien among the crew. While others shuffled in the artificial 0.87G environment, compensating for the slight difference from Earth standard, Liana simply existed, as if gravity was a suggestion rather than a law. "You sure about this?" Liana asked, not looking up from the spectral analyzer she was calibrating. Her dark hair was tied back in a practical bun, and her jumpsuit bore the insignia of the exobiology division. James smirked. "Come on, you've never had proper combat training. Out here, beyond the Kuiper Belt, you never know what we might encounter. The Zalari are peaceful, sure, but their data showed 17 other species in this sector alone." "I grew up on Mars," Liana said mildly, finally setting down her equipment. "We had drills. Evacuation drills aren't combat training." James tossed her the second practice sword. She caught it one-handed without looking, and he felt a flicker of something, surprise, maybe respect, before pushing it down. Lucky catch. "Besides, I trained at the Olympus Mons Academy. 3 years of tactical combat certification." Liana examined the sword with the same analytical interest she'd give to a new mineral sample. "This is chromium polymer composite, designed to flex under stress but maintain structural integrity up to approximately 400 kilopascals." She looked up at him. "Right?" Yeah, something like that." James rolled his shoulders. "Ready?" She stood, and James immediately noticed how she positioned herself. Not in any recognizable guard stance, just standing there, sword held loosely in one hand. Amateur hour. "Okay, first lesson," James began, stepping forward. "Your stance is everything. You want to—" He didn't finish the sentence because Liana had moved. Not attacked, just shifted her weight slightly to the left. The sword in her hand hadn't budged. "Your center of gravity is too high," she observed, "and you're compensating for Earth-standard muscle development in a reduced G environment. Your reaction time is going to be approximately 0.14 seconds slower than you expect." James blinked. "What?" "Sorry, occupational hazard. I analyze things." Liana offered a small smile. "Please, continue with the lesson." Something in her tone made James bristle. He'd worked hard for his certifications, spent countless hours in simulation and live training. This wasn't some academic exercise. This was real skill. "All right," he said, setting his jaw. "Defend yourself." He came in with a basic overhead strike, telegraph obvious, meant to test her reaction. Liana's sword came up in a lazy arc, meeting his blade at a precise 45-degree angle. The impact should have been minor, just a light clash to demonstrate the proper blocking technique. Instead, James felt the shock reverberate through his arms like he'd struck a bulkhead. His training sword bent, not a little flex. It curved into a pronounced arc, the polymer composite protesting with a high-pitched whine before partially straightening as he pulled back. "What the—" James stared at his weapon, then at Liana. She looked at her own sword, seemingly surprised. "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to—" "How did you do that?" James demanded. "You barely moved." "I just— blocked?" Liana's brow furrowed. "I calculated the optimal angle to redirect the kinetic energy and—" She stopped, seeing his expression. "You really don't know, do you?" "Know what?" Liana sighed and set down her sword. "James, I grew up on Mars. Not in the domes, in the deep colonies. The 0.38 G zones." "Yeah, so? Lots of people grow up in low G." For the first 18 years of my life, I lived in one-third Earth gravity. Liana held up her hand, examining it like it belonged to someone else. Do you know what happens to human musculature when it develops in that environment, but is maintained through high-resistance training to prevent atrophy? James felt his mouth go dry as understanding began to dawn. Every day we trained in resistance suits. Every day for hours, we fought against hydraulic pressure systems designed to simulate Earth gravity, while our bodies built muscle density in Martian gravity. Liana picked up the sword again, and James noticed the way her forearm barely showed the strain of holding it. When I came to Earth for university, I had to wear dampening braces for 6 months so I wouldn't accidentally hurt people shaking hands. You're saying you're stronger? It sounded absurd even as he said it. Significantly. Liana rolled her shoulders. In this 0.87 G environment, I'm operating at roughly 40% of the resistance my muscles were conditioned for. The sword feels like it weighs about 70 grams to me. To you, it's probably close to 300. James looked at his bent training sword, at the young woman who'd warped it without effort, and felt his pride deflating like a punctured habitat seal. The really interesting part, Liana continued, warming to the subject in that way scientists did, is the neurological adaptation. My proprioception, my sense of body position and movement, calibrated in an environment where every action required different force calculations. I don't think about the physics anymore. I just know how hard to push, where to angle, how to maximize efficiency. She demonstrated by gently tossing her sword into the air. It spun exactly 3 times before she caught it by the handle, the motion so precise it looked computer-generated. I wasn't trying to break your sword, James, Liana said softly. I was actually holding back. On Mars, we'd use these for practice and they'd last for years. James set down his damaged weapon, ego thoroughly bruised. So, you don't need combat training. I didn't say that. Liana smiled genuinely now. I don't know technique or strategy. I just have physics on my side. She extended a hand. Maybe we could learn from each other? You teach me proper form? I help you understand how to optimize movement in variable gravity? James looked at her hand, then took it. Her grip was gentle, carefully calibrated not to crush his bones. Deal, he said. But maybe we use reinforced practice swords next time. Liana laughed, and the sound echoed warmly through the cargo bay as the Meridian Dawn sailed deeper into unknown space, carrying its crew of surprising talents toward whatever mysteries awaited among the stars.